Idea Start podcast explores all things innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Co-created by Idea Start and the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. Join us and move your ideas to impact with the University of Manitoba community. Rajeev, welcome to the very first recording of the Idea Start podcast.
And welcome to you too, Janine. Can you believe it? It's really our first
I
podcast
know.
Today.
It's such an exciting day. We've been thinking about this and planning and consulting. And here we are in our studio for the first recording.
That's correct. And so what's this all about?
Yeah, we should start there,
Yes.
shouldn't we? Well, I think the vision for the Idea Start podcast is this opportunity to talk about all things creativity, all things innovation, and all things entrepreneurship. And ultimately in the process, I think what you and I are both most excited for is this idea of building community.
That's correct. And it's, I think, very important for us to note that, the Idea Start podcast is a new channel, but it's not necessarily a new space for UM.
Yeah.
So, the podcast will essentially extend on a legacy of supports and entrepreneurial action from our institution.
That's a really good point, Rajeev. Thank you for raising that. I think that's something that we're both quite excited to do with this podcast, to share with the audience, the faculty, the staff, the students, alumni, parents, other institutions that have already been engaged in this entrepreneurial space at UM. So why don't we start there? Who are some of the important players that we'll get to know in the podcast?
No, that's a great idea, I think. And let's start with the Stu Clark Center for Entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I think they've been doing some great work at UM, and they have been around for 25 years now. They are the leading support for students with any ideas in entrepreneurship and innovation. Yeah. We then have the technology transfer specialists, what is now called as the PKMI. That's the Partnership, Knowledge Mobilization and Innovation Office. They help our researchers with anything to do with licensing, with patents, and for industrial collaboration. Yeah. Then we have some of our faculties, right? And they have taken lead. For example, the Faculty of Science, they have their innovation hub, and they support entrepreneurship at the faculty. We can also, I think, talk about some of our entrepreneurial alumni. They have gone out to build great institutions at Manitoba. We should also talk about some of our external partners. Yeah. Don't forget that at the Smart Park campus, we have North Forge and we have Futurepreneur.
Yeah.
North Forge is, in fact, the leading incubation provider for technology and science startups in Manitoba.
Yeah.
So we have quite a lot of supports, as you can see, and I'm sure going ahead we'll feature some of the leaders at our podcast.
Yeah. Yes, and of course we also have scholars in the discipline of entrepreneurship.
That's right.
Yeah, and faculty and instructors outside of the business faculty who are teaching these skills as well. Yeah.
Well, I want to pick up on something that we spoke about earlier, and that's the communities piece.
Right.
And that's so important for both you and me. And, we are both really committed to kind of building this community here at UM and to share with this community and connect in a real meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that you and I have talked about since the beginning, right?
Absolutely.
And I think there is this temptation, there is this sense sometimes that entrepreneurial thought and action, that it's easy. Yeah. And I think you and I both know that it's not. But what makes it easier, is being connected with others for the purpose of for the purpose of learning, for the purpose of support.
Yes.
That can be so crucial to success. And
absolutely.
So that's a real, I think, guiding principle for you and I in developing this podcast.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, it's important that we ask, why you and I?
Yeah. Why you and I? I suppose we are the relative newbies on the front of the U of M. Yes. But I think it does show this growing commitment by the institution in this space. And so I work within the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning. It is a support unit for all the faculties and colleges at the university related to teaching and learning and doing that well. And my specific title is Faculty Specialist for Entrepreneurship.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't
That's
like.
interesting.
Often on first hearing that, I think, why does that belong in a teaching center? But the idea here is that at the university, since our founding, we have really been engaged in experiential learning, and it's an area where we can continue to grow. And some types of experiential learning are more known. If we think about maybe like co-op or labs,
Yes.
where we get to practice, or clinical settings,
Yeah.
where we get to practice. But entrepreneurship is one of the types of experiential learning that we recognize at the university. And so the idea is that by engaging in entrepreneurship, by solving real-world problems, learners can develop these really important competencies for their future. And it's a future that's complex and changing very quickly.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, so it's this idea of learning through entrepreneurship and helping faculty and instructors embed that kind of learning. And then aside from that, we also have faculties at the university who are interested in providing more opportunities for their learners to learn about entrepreneurship and to learn for entrepreneurship. And
Yes.
so I'm really delighted to be here. I'm delighted to play my small part in this work at our very large institution.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm sure that we are very happy to have you here, by the way. And as far as Idea Start, I think Idea Start is, as you know, a very new initiative at UM, and it's part of the Vice President Research and International Office. And, the idea with Idea Start is to kind of build a culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity, and to amplify the supports that we already have. Think of it as a hop on, hop off bus.
Okay.
Right?
I like that.
Yes. So, if you're a student or any other member of the UM community, you could be faculty, staff, alumni, and if you, let's say, are curious about entrepreneurship, or you have an idea about entrepreneurship, you can hop in and find out what are the supports available, and we can guide you to those supports, and then you can hop off. Maybe if you take a break and you want to come back and then work on your idea and want to build a startup of some kind, and then you can hop in back again, and we'll again help you. And if there are any gap in ecosystem, the idea is to try and identify those, fill that up, make and build new partnerships, not just in Manitoba, but also look at building partnerships nationally and globally, and hopefully build what we call as the global entrepreneurship highway.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I know it's very early days, Rajeev,
Yes.
but we're excited for the impact that Idea Start will bring to the UM community as well.
Yep.
Maybe before we go any further, could you just share a little bit about yourself and what you're bringing to the university?
Sure. Well, before I joined Idea Start, I am a newcomer to Canada, and I was in Bangalore in India, leading a tech incubation program called the 10,000 Startups. It's essentially India's largest incubation program, and I used to lead the Bangalore region for that. Prior to doing that, I have done 3 startups of my own, 2 in education technology, 1 in hospitality. And I've also worked in corporates in leadership roles in India and in UAE. I have led investor relations, managed VCs, angel networks. So in many ways, all my experience I'm putting to use here at Idea Start. And I'm very excited because I've never worked in academia before, right? And I'm super glad that I have our director, Moses Levy, or Mo Levy, to lead this initiative. He, as you know, is UM alumni himself. He is a UM alum, and incidentally, he got the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
Last year for his contribution, and he's well-known and established name in this sector. And between him and me, we are both very excited to work on this initiative.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us something about your background?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like Mo, I'm an alum of the University of
Right.
Manitoba. I studied at the Asper School of Business, and I majored in entrepreneurship
Wow.
and international business. And I really thought, Rajeev, that my future was going to be in leading an entrepreneurial venture.
Really?
Yeah, in
Okay.
fact, during university, it was my very first foray into it. I started a business teaching piano lessons,
Oh.
and my competitive advantage at the time was that I would drive to the family's home.
Mm-hmm.
So I eliminated that driving piece for parents. But
Right.
shortly after I graduated, I started with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. CFIB is an advocacy organization for small and medium-sized businesses, exclusively small and medium-sized businesses here in Canada. And it was a joy. It was a total joy. It was a wonderful decade that I spent with CFIB. And as things go, sometimes you just need a change. And
Yes,
after
we all
about
do.
after about a decade, I moved to Red River College Polytechnic to teach entrepreneurship and a bunch of other courses in business administration. And I just got to tell you, Rajeev, like I kind of fell hard for teaching.
Oh.
Teaching and learning became my jam,
Right.
and just an area that I really wanted to continue to focus on. And so when I saw this opportunity at the university, I wasn't really looking for a change, but I thought, wow, like to bring together these two pieces of my career journey would be quite exciting. And so
Yes.
I'm very happy to be here and to be contributing to, as you mentioned earlier, a legacy of good work and moving that even forward now into the future. One of the things, Rajeev, I have to say, during that kind of interview process and onboarding process that's made me quite excited about the work that we're doing at the university is President Benarosh's vision of entrepreneurship. And shortly after I started, I had this opportunity to interview him, and he talked about entrepreneurship as a willingness and an ability to make an impact.
Yes.
Yeah. So willingness, he was talking about like the mindset part. The ability, he was talking about like a set of skills. There are some things that we can learn, but then to make an impact. And we had a real robust discussion about what that means. And of course, we can start new companies. We can create jobs. We can have new products and services. And like those are amazing, wonderful things for our economy and for our communities. But we can also recognize impact in other ways.
Yes.
Right? Like we can be solving social challenges, environmental challenges, making real impact for a community. And so I love that the focus is broad.
Totally.
Of the work that we're to do.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, that's something that really excites me as well. And this whole idea that we are not here just for profit technology startups, though they are, like you said, great too.
Yeah.
But we are here also for supporting social entrepreneurship. For example, in fact, my first startup was a social entrepreneurship.
Oh, really?
Yes, in education. We are also here to support, for example, indigenous entrepreneurship. And I think that's very important considering our context here in Manitoba and how important it is to support indigenous entrepreneurs. We are also here to support, any kind of nonprofit ideas, for example. Why just for profit, right?
Yeah.
Any ideas essentially that have potential for a positive societal impact.
Yeah. Ideas to impact.
Ideas to impact.
That's a good tagline. Love it.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I think, as we talked about kind of the power of entrepreneurship in this broad way, we are, though, an educational institution, right?
Yes.
And we are about equipping learners with the skills, with the knowledge, with the attitudes that are necessary for success in this domain. And so we have lots of curricular options, of course,
Yes.
and they're very good. We have lots of co-curricular opportunities as well. I think our audience might know it more as like extracurricular.
Yes.
Right? So maybe not the things you're doing for your degree, but other workshops or just learning environments that help to build other skills. And I'd like to kind of position this podcast in there, that this is just one more tool to be building these skills for the community and with the community.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. So today is the first day of recording the Idea Start podcast. I'm going to ask you a really hard question,
Wow,
Rajeev.
okay. I'm all ears.
Yeah, I want you to imagine it's 5 years ahead. How would you describe this podcast?
Okay, let's see. I think, I would be very happy if we would have achieved the community piece really, if we could have built that vibrant community that's very engaged with the podcast and that considers the podcast to be very authentic, in its source for not just knowledge and information, but also as inspiration, and considers this as a great place for insights into anything that has got to do with entrepreneurship and innovation at and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to tell you, Rajeev, I just kind of threw in a little teaching and learning thing there, right? Because teachers always like to start with the end in mind, right? What do we hope to achieve? What do we hope our learners can do? And I couldn't agree more with the things you identified. In entrepreneurship education, we often talk a lot about iteration.
Yes.
And this idea of focusing on getting started instead of being perfect. Because when we start, then we get to iterate.
Yes.
We get to learn, we get to incorporate the feedback that we're getting, the validation that we're getting, and then get better, right?
Absolutely. And that's our philosophy, with the podcast.
Yeah.
And if we waited it to be perfect, for example, I think we wouldn't have started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we would still be waiting. So we genuinely look forward to, learning and iterating and going ahead with this podcast. And for the audience, I would like to say that, if you have any feedback, please share that with us. Tell us what kind of, people you would like us to call and invite in our podcast. What kind of topics would you like us to cover? And, any kind of feedback. And please mention that in our comment section, and we'll be very happy to read those and work with you in making this podcast better as we go along.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Rajeev. Well, to our audience, welcome to the Idea Start podcast.
Welcome.
Welcome. Let's get started and then let's get better.
That's good. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much, Janine, and look forward to building this podcast with you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks, Rajeev.
Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you don't miss a new episode of the Idea Start podcast. Please connect with us and share your comments below. And let us know how the topics are resonating with you and what guests would you like to see featured.